Charles Bediako is no longer eligible to play college basketball, and everybody is happy except for Alabama fans and the three teams that lost to them this month.
Welcome in to Locked On College Basketball Squad Show, your go-to spot for everything happening on the hardwood, from blue blood battles to bracket busters and everything in between. Join the squad of hoops junkies as we break down the biggest stories with the boldest takes and unfiltered opinions. Because here, we don't hold back. It's the College Basketball Squad Show on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What is up, folks? Welcome into the Locked On College Basketball Squad Show. I am your host, Andy Patton, also the host of Locked On College Basketball and Locked On Zags, joined today by a handful of the great Locked On hosts here. We got my co-host for Locked On College Basketball and the host of Locked On Tar Heels, probably feeling still pretty good, Isaac Shade, here with us. We also got Locked On Jayhawks host Derek Johnson, also in a pretty good mood today. Locked On Wildcats host Leaf Tulane, Locked On Cougs Parker Ainsworth, and Locked On Duke JJ Jackson. Thanks for all being here, guys, today. Should be a really fun one. We're going to talk all about this Charles Bediako situation. It feels like it's the only topic we've been covering here, but every time we schedule a squad show, it feels like news breaks on this situation, whether it was Bediako and then the Amari Bailey situation. So now, of course, with the new update that Bediako is now ineligible, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about some of the games that happened here on Monday night as we're recording this live. Also, some of the games coming up this week as well. I want to remind you all that today's episode is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda puts the same drive into every detail. Wins define the moment, but putting in the work, that's what defines you. Stay tuned for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward segment. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you. All right, folks, we're going to start here again with this Charles Bediako news. In case you missed this, Charles Bediako was deemed ineligible. I guess more specifically, a judge denied Bediako's motion seeking a preliminary injunction. So after playing on this temporary restraining order for 5 games with Alabama, Bediako now is no longer eligible to play per the NCAA's bylaws. So those 5 games will still count. They're still in the standings. Alabama went 3-2 in those games for what it is worth, but he is no longer going to continue to play for the team. It's been an insane, goofy, wild story to have somebody back in college basketball for such a short period of time. Guys, reaction to this, I know we kind of were waiting for, it felt like half a day of waiting, like when are we going to actually get the announcement about this situation? But there was kind of some rumblings that it was going to go in this direction. Anybody surprised? Anybody thought that Bediako was going to keep getting a chance to play for the rest of the year?
I did, only insofar as the NCAA always loses everything in court. But
right.
I think the thought was the responsible thing to do is exactly what happened. And so I am pleasantly shocked at the result of this thing. And I think that's the good news. Obviously, there's a lot of questions that I'm sure we'll get to about the ramifications of this in terms of legal precedent, in terms of how does the selection committee handle those 5 games, both for Alabama and the teams they played? There's just a lot around it. Anyway, I think I am pleasantly surprised at this result, and with no shade towards Bediako or Alabama. I just think for the good of the sport, this is what had to happen.
Shouldn't those games be forfeited, though? Like, in the spirit of, maybe this is just spurned KU fan who, like, in 2018 with Silvio De Sousa playing for getting like $2,000. They ended up having to vacate the Final Four that year. They ended up having to vacate the Big 12 championship, which extended their Big 12 championship streak from 13 straight to 14 straight at the time. And, at the end of the day, like, I don't really care that much, in the same way that, like, I still acknowledge Louisville won the 2013 national championship. Like, I was there. Are they going to refund my Final Four tickets that I had to watch Villanova slaughter me for? If so, then I will say they didn't that year, but, like, they're not going to do that. So I just think that if people are getting penalized in the past for playing ineligible players, like, could you imagine if they did that to Alabama and all of a sudden now they're 13-10 and they're kind of a bubble team?
Well, only 13-10 if the committee did it like you're saying, or if they did it like the way you're saying you actually do it, though, Derek, right? They'd probably have trouble with that. I really, though, I echo Isaac's like combination of shock and kind of feelings, because I kind of thought this would happen much later after several more lawsuits and injunctions, and like it'd take longer. I thought it was going to get messier because the one judge was not really the right person or fit because he's a major donor. Like this happened, frankly, quicker than I thought, and that it's only a handful of games might actually be the saving grace. It could have gotten a lot messier to me.
Well,
that's the surprise for me.
Go ahead, JJ.
I was just going to say that the surprise for me is how quickly all this happened. That I was definitely expecting, like Parker, this to take much longer before we finally got to a resolution. And the fact that it's just after 5 games, good on this. I'm glad that this is the result that played out and happened. But I just assumed, thinking about court cases in years past and the NCAA in years past, as Isaac said a little bit ago, this would just keep getting pushed further and further back. And that didn't happen. So, hey, I like it.
What stands out to me about it is like we have the 5 games, and again we mentioned they went 3-2. So if you're going to vacate the losses or you're going to vacate the wins, like how do you like Florida beat the absolute tar out of Alabama when they had Bediako? Like you don't want to take that game away from Florida, and that's not what would happen, obviously. But like it's not like Alabama was incredibly good with Charles Bediako. Like I think I kind of teased it in the open. I think the teams that have the most kind of qualms right now would be Texas A&M and Auburn, because they lost very, very close games to Alabama. They are both teams that honestly probably will be around the bubble depending on how the rest of the season goes for them. It's not, Florida's not going to be on the bubble. They don't have to worry about it. I'm not sure Missouri will be on the bubble, and they got beat very badly by Alabama. But like A&M and Auburn are teams where that loss and that like 2-possession loss, I think it was for both of them, could be the determiner whether they make the tournament or not. And Alabama's no longer has the player that they had in that game. Like that, I would be furious if
A&M's was a 1-possession loss.
But shouts to Blackerby for the thousands and thousands of views and the outrage they'll have. Right. I think that what's funny here though, Zach, is that, or not Zach, because I just talking about him, Andy, is that the funnier outcome would be if they said, Florida, I don't know if you'd have beaten them if they hadn't had Bediako. That really gave you a big advantage. Like that would be, I had not considered that as that would be the funniest, is taking a win away from Florida because the game shouldn't have happened, would be really, really funny.
What's funny, I tweeted something about like, what's his butt from Sports Illustrated? Kevin Sweeney said something about it, and I was like, yeah, if I'm A&M and Auburn, I'm like livid about this. And that, like, go find the tweet. It is flooded with Alabama fans pissed, absolutely pissed, because A&M's Rayshon Agee is playing on a season-long TRO. As Bediako's was just like a couple games. So they're like, well, so what? A&M and Agee and all that stuff. And it's like, oh, fine, whatever.
I would be hearing the exact same things had Gonzaga lost to Alabama, because Grant Foster is also playing on a season-long TRO. So like, yeah, but there's an obvious difference in those things, and I think that's what.
Thank you, Andy. Yes.
Yeah, that's what stands out to me is like, and to mention Kevin Sweeney again, I guess we'll give him a couple shout outs on the show. He had tweeted that one of the main things that stood out in the judge's ruling was that the judge did not determine that having returned to college basketball was the same as European pros playing college basketball, which again, like those should not have been conflated, but that is what the argument for James Najee getting the chance to play for Baylor, and the argument for Cherry Darlon at Santa Clara, and the Louisville players, London Johnson. Those guys, the argument was basically, well, we're letting Euro guys who are, under 23 play college basketball. The G League is a similar league to European leagues. And like, I don't love that argument, but I do get it from a legal perspective. But returning to college basketball is a whole different animal. And I'm glad that the judge determined, like, yes, this is not the same, and these things are not compatible. And hopefully that kind of puts an end to this, at least for now, until somebody tries it again 1, 2, 5, 10 years from now.
Question is this it? Can there be more appeals? Like I just feel like there's always no end to legal capability of how many times you can redo stuff. Has anybody, like, I haven't read far enough to know, like, if the decision that was handed down on Monday is like, that's it and done, and we will not see Charles Bediako playing for Bama again this year.
I think JJ's got the college shirt on, so he's probably close thing to a lawyer in the group. He may know, but I think honestly the trick here is that, like, it's probably not dead until Bediako decides it is. Kind of the inverse, right? Like, in an unprecedented situation, who's to say he couldn't keep pushing up to the Supreme Court ultimately, right? And like really making a real.
It's just a timing thing.
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
They went to the Supreme.
Yeah, because if you try to extend it past this year, then Bediako runs into the issue of being outside the 5-year window, which hasn't really been challenged by the NCAA. So I think in that way, it's probably toast. You can appeal, I assume. Again, not a legalese here, but I think you could probably appeal. But again, the timing on that is probably not really worth it for Alabama. But I am curious if they're going to. I'm sure they're gathering their thoughts and trying to decide how to respond. But yeah, I'm curious if there's going to be. I think it like kills the Amari Bailey situation. You know, the player from UCLA was thinking about coming back. Like I think he's. You know, I mean, maybe he's going to try to figure out another like wrinkle wraparound, but he doesn't really have any different arguments than Bediako's. So I think it's going to kill it for now. But again, until there are strong guidelines either from Congress or the NCAA somehow makes this happen where it's firm, they're going to continue to be challenged in court. And they got to win today, but they're not going to win every time. We know that.
JJ.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about, just the Bediako of it all. And again, as an Auburn alum, didn't really love how the game went this past weekend in that respect. But like, is this guy showing up to class still? Like, is he going to try to keep playing this on, or what is his next move now that this college basketball door has been slammed shut in his face once again?
Yeah. Well, let's talk about some of these games, folks. We just came off of the Monday night games. Big Monday fully delivered. It wasn't a close game in the ACC matchup, but boy, it was a fun game. And then we got a fantastic one in the Big 12. Arizona goes down. The number 1 team takes their first loss of the season, and it happened without Kansas playing their leading scorer, Darryn Peterson. We're going to talk about all of that, what it means for those two teams, all that coming up here in just a second. But first, folks, today's episode is brought to you by Mazda. This is Mazda's moving the game forward for those who show there's more to the score than what's on the screen. Another game, not part of Big Monday, but we had St. John's Xavier on Monday night. Rick versus Richard versus his son. St. John's got a little bit of a scare in this one, won in overtime at the Madison Square Garden. But it's always fun to see the family reunion here. Nice kind of moment between the two coaches after the game. Rick was quite proud of his son, but not proud enough to let him get a W at the Madison Square Garden. Always fun to see those moments. And that kind of reminds us what it really takes to raise the bar. It's that extra work that goes in off the court. It's dialing in every detail, that extra fire, that grit, that never quit attitude. And Mazda put that same passion into every model. Highlights make the reel, but what it took to get there, that's what makes it count. And there's more to a Mazda because there's more to you. Today's episode is also brought to you by Wayfair. Folks, spring cleaning is almost here, and it is the perfect time to reset your routine and refresh your space. If you're spending more time at home, you might as well love the way it looks and feels. And that's why you should turn to Wayfair. It's a one-stop shop for getting your home back on track. From bedding and mattresses to storage solutions for every room, Wayfair makes it easy to start the year fresh. And Wayfair has everything that you need for a full home refresh all in one place. Whether you're updating your living room, organizing your room, or upgrading your work from home setup. Wayfair's huge selection makes it easy to find exactly what works for your style and for your budget. We're doing some touch-ups in our place right now. Some of you might be able to tell in the background here. And Wayfair is going to be instrumental in helping to redesign this space for our family. Shopping is easy, delivery is smooth, and everything arrives exactly as expected, which honestly made getting back into a routine feel a lot more manageable. So get organized, get refreshed, and get back on track for way less. Head to wayfair.com right now to shop all things home. That's wayfair.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. All right, folks, want to thank all of you for making Locked On College Basketball Squad Show your first listen or watch of the day. Those of you hanging out with us live as well, thank you all for helping to make Locked On the #1 sports podcasting network. All right, we're going to start number 1 at number 9, a top 10 matchup at Fog Allen Fieldhouse on Monday night between Arizona and Kansas. And the first storyline we got out of this game was no Darryn Peterson does not suit up. Derek, we obviously got to talk about the win and the fact that this team kind of circled the wagons. Melvin Council, what an incredible performance. Flory Badunga. But what was your reaction to finding out Peterson wasn't going to suit up? Which is, it's not exactly like this hasn't been a storyline throughout the season, even if this was for a different reason.
No, that in some sense, it makes it like more I don't know, less expected or more expected, I guess you would say, but like still the nature of it, he's not on the injury report, which is weird because we heard from Bill Self in the post game and he said we knew he was 50-50 as of yesterday, which I'm just like, well, then why wasn't he on the injury report? But that's a question for another day, I guess. We heard that he was out in some games earlier this year with flu-like symptoms. And then it kind of came out in the aftermath, like, was that just kind of hiding what was actually happening with the cramping or the leg situation? And now it's like, okay, like, is there a sickness problem? Is it just different things? Like, who knows what is exactly happening here? But it definitely seems like one of those things where it's like, you have the dichotomy of Elmarco Jackson, who missed all of last season with a torn patellar tendon, and he re-injured his knee in the BYU game. And he missed the Saturday game. He did play in the Texas Tech game, and then he missed the Saturday game against Utah. But he came back and he's playing through the injury in this game. And you have the dichotomy of that against people who has missed all these games. It is frustrating for KU fans. It's frustrating for me. Like, I just want to focus because this has been a fun team for KU basketball, especially after how the last 2 years have gone for this program. Like, this has been a very fun team to watch, and it has kind of taken away a little bit from that. But at the end of the day, like, I'm still going to enjoy Darryn Peterson when he's on the floor because he's a spectacular talent. He's unbelievable, but it is getting to levels that are frustrating, to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, that's what stands out to me is that this has just been such an ongoing story for Kansas this year. The playing in the first half of games, not playing in the second half of games, missing full games, and you know, the late kind of announcements on some of it. But it's certainly notable, and I'm not going to make the argument, and I doubt Derek or anybody else is going to make this argument that Kansas is better without Darryn Peterson, but gosh, they've won some of their best games without him on the floor. This win, obviously, over the number one team in the country, and yes, it was at home. That helps. They beat Tennessee back in Las Vegas without Darryn Peterson as well. Their other best win, at least according to the KenPom rankings, is Iowa State, and Peterson did play in that game, although it wasn't exactly one of his strongest performances. So I don't think that that's Darryn Peterson is hurting the team. That's a ridiculous, I think, sentiment, but it's very impressive what somebody like, again, Melvin Council in particular, what he's able to do on short notice. If this truly was hey, he found out right before the game that, you know, he was going to take on a much bigger role offensively without Darryn Peterson, that just strikes me as something that, is really impressive for this team to be able to do. But Leaf, I kind of toss to you a little bit. I wonder if there's an element of like, I don't think this was the intention for Kansas, but if there's an element of like, Tommy and Arizona not being fully prepared because they were caught off guard by the fact that a lot of their game plan defensively probably came around defending Peterson and expecting him to play the role that, you know, Council ended up playing. Do you think that played into this at all?
Well, I do think that the scouting report obviously changes, and you got to, you know, panic and 15 minutes before the game change who's guarding whom and some of the coverages. But I don't think it actually cost them an opportunity to win. Like, Darryn Peterson was out. Like, that's the real deal story, is like the guy who can score 40 any given night didn't play. What I do think it changed the pace of the game. Kansas plays with the 199th fastest tempo in college basketball in all their games, and I'd bet that pretty confidently it's slower with Peterson than that.
Yes.
And what Kansas did was they raced up and down the floor, and Arizona has no problems against speedy teams. But what happened is that Arizona typically wears teams out with their depth, but they had three players that are typically very, very good, completely non-factors today. And so essentially Mo Krivas was the best player on the floor for the first 25 minutes of this game, was just exhausted in the second half. And that's when Flory Badunga woke up. And Flory was great. And I don't mean that as a slight, but the fact that Koa Pete and Jaden Bradley, both of whom will be all Big Ten, went 4 of 19 combined. And Tobe Awaka, the best rebounder in the country, was awful. I think had a lot to do with the pace of the game. And I think the pace of the game wore out Arizona. And that would be what my takeaway of the Darryn Peterson difference is if Darryn Peterson plays, there's a lot more iso ball. There's a lot more heliocentric basketball from Kansas. And Council had 25 or 23 or something, but he took 25 shots. So I don't think like Council did that much to beat Arizona. Like I think the biggest thing that beat Arizona is Arizona typically is great near the rim. Kansas did a good job mitigating the advantages that Arizona always has. Like, Arizona won the rebound still. They won the field goal percentage battle, but Arizona often shoots. I mean, they shoot 58% from two. They shot 44% from the field, and they usually shoot 53%. And that's credit to Kansas. That's a credit to Flory Badunga. But I also think the points in the paint was only +2. And in a game against Kansas in Arizona, you're probably thinking it's going to be like +10, +15 for Arizona. And threes are going to be close. Arizona made more threes. Everyone says the biggest key is three-pointers. So to me, I really think Arizona played poorly in the sense that 2 All-American candidates went 4 of 19. Kansas is a formidable place, no doubt about it. And you just played – you had a bad game where 3 players of your top 5 players combined could be complete non-factors in a game where the pace picked up and one of the best players on the team just was exhausted. Krivas was a non-factor in the second half because he was so tired after being the best player on the floor for the first 25 minutes, in my opinion. And kudos to Kansas. I also felt Bill Self out-coached Tommy Lloyd, called timeouts when his team was down, when the runs were happening. And Tommy Lloyd let Arizona play through mistakes, but honestly, I think fatigued them even more. So I thought Arizona played the worst game that they've played this season, frankly. And I thought Kansas played really intelligently to the weaknesses that were being displayed by Arizona.
My biggest takeaway from that whole thing is that if those 2 guys are first team all Big Ten, they've really achieved something. Like that's crazy, Leaf, to think about. Really. Parker.
I watched the game for a number of different reasons, and I want to talk about a couple of them. But one, I'm interested in the out-coached aspect that Leaf mentioned. That actually wasn't what I was going to bring up first, but because I don't mean this as total shade. I do think though that like it takes playing in Fog Allen. That's a very particular place to go play against, and honestly, I'm looking for some of those Lloyd wins in the Big 12. And like I thought about like when Houston played at Arizona last year, I thought Sampson also outcoached them. Then I guess I didn't realize Isaac put his shades on. I guess Leaf, was it as simple as like rotation?
Total shade, baby. Total shade.
Was there a more like schematic thing you're thinking about when you say that? Because you've seen them play a lot more than I watched this game for a different reason. I'll get to it, but you watched this game much more closely, this team more closely than I have.
Well, I mean, I think Tommy Lloyd put them in the position to win the game if their best players played even averagely. Like I said, like Koa Pete and Jaden Bradley went 4 of 19. So I want to point that out and saying like this is not a drastic. Tommy Lloyd was terrible. I do think the mistakes were made in the sense of timeouts weren't called when Kansas had momentum, and Kansas called them every time Arizona had momentum. Kansas called timeout when Arizona was up 6 in the first half. Kansas called timeout when Arizona was up 11 in the second half. And swiftly, Bill Self out of timeout calls up the right plays, and they ramp up pace. I felt that Tommy Lloyd's biggest issue is Bradley was out too long at the beginning of the poor run, and though he was bad, that's your point guard. And then Burries was out for the middle stretch of that poor run with about 10 minutes to 5 minutes left in the game. And Burries was your best perimeter scorer. Like I think I know it's rest, but if you're not going to find the right rest in an 8-man rotation that you've done all year, especially when some of your players are playing really poorly, then I am going to be critical of that. And the other point I would make is Tobe Awaka had 3 fouls. Like people talk about foul trouble. 3 fouls is nothing, especially when you have Mo Krivas to use as a foil to him. Tobe Awaka is the best rebounder in the country, point blank and period. Like, why is he not impacting the game whatsoever when the other teams actually got size? Kansas is 15th in offensive rebounds, and Kansas won the second chance battle. And I thought that was by not playing Tobe Awaka with foul troubles for no reason.
What's interesting?
I tell you. Well, what I think is crazy too of this game and everything you're talking about with Arizona being worn out is KU basically played a 6-man rotation. They only played 8 guys. Paul Mbia played 2 minutes. Cole Rosario was in there for a cup of coffee. It was really a 6-man rotation, and Trey White struggled. Trey White's been one of KU's best players. He goes 1 of 6 from the floor. And like you said, Melvin Council, 25 shots to get to the 23. It felt like with Council to me, every shot he made was an important shot. And so it felt like a bigger 6 of 25 than it probably was. But that's just what and we were talking about this off air before. Like, I mean, I certainly thought the way that Arizona was going to lose the game this year was the other team was going to get hot from 3 and that they were just going to, Arizona wasn't going to take as many and it was going to be a math problem. But KU got outshot by Arizona from 3 in this game. And that just kind of blows my mind.
One of the interesting things to me here is it felt like similar to like Duke in the ACC. Now that Arizona, it's felt like Arizona is far and away above everyone else. But with this result, Arizona's just a half game up on Houston, a game up on Kansas, a game and a half on Iowa State, Texas Tech a little further back. But I feel like this really brings the Big 12 play. It brings the Big 12 top of it into play. And man, we got a lot of basketball left, fellas, before this thing wraps up. Gonna be really interesting.
Yeah, it's that was what I was going to say too, is like the Big 12, like it gets bunched up really, really fast at this point. And I want to get into kind of which of those teams are how we're feeling about them being legitimate contenders this year, which ones maybe we're not as confident about. But before we do that, I do really want to talk about Mikel Brown and the performance that he had in the first game of the Big Monday. It was Louisville, NC State, and Isaac and I, when we previewed this game, we kind of thought, maybe NC State will be ranked, maybe they'll be in that conversation. Louisville was 24, NC State stayed unranked, and that's going to continue to be the case because Louisville beat the absolute pants off of them in this game, scored 118 points against NC State, and 45 of those points came from Mikel Brown. And for those of you who are following like NBA draft or following this freshman class, it feels like every time we're always talking about the big three. We're talking about Caleb Wilson and Kingston Flemings and Keaton Wagler. And then the guys that kind of dipped down a little bit have been surging. Nate Oats has been surging for Tennessee. And now Mikel Brown, who everybody's been criticizing his 3-point shooting, he goes out and knocks down 10 of them, resets the ACC freshman scoring record set by Cooper Flagg last year. Just an incredible performance and a reminder, hey, I'm still here and I can still do this. It was quite a showing from him.
It was one of those games where you want to refresh the final score and make sure your eyes are actually reading what you're seeing, to score that many points in a conference game. My word. But it just goes to show the type of player that Brown is. And, in a couple of the big games, the first one against Duke, he wasn't able to go for Louisville. And then in the second one, did not play that well at all. Dame Sarr kind of had him locked up for the majority of the night. But NC State's been riding a lot of momentum, and they got absolutely humbled in a game like this, going on the road in conference play. So shouts to this freshman class, man, and Mikel Brown Jr. saying, talk about me a little bit more when you've got a big Monday performance like that.
On a night that KU had a big win, I just want to throw in there that Melvin Council held Mikel Brown to 2 of 15 in an exhibition game. So
what's funny to me about this game is poor Ryan Conwell drops 31 and is an absolute footnote, right? Like
on 10 of 14. 10 of 14.
The funny thing is, the final score of this basketball game was NC State 77, Mikel Brown and Ryan Conwell 76. Like that was the final score of this game. How about this? Louisville scores 118 and only 2 players got into double figures. Like that is insanity, dudes. Crazy. But here's the big picture thing about Louisville, y'all. I was hanging out on Locked On ACC with Dono and KG earlier today, and one of the things I said to them was Louisville and we didn't know that it would be this, but I said any given night Louisville can do exactly what they did tonight. You just cross your fingers that you're not the team that gets bombed on, and unfortunately for NC State tonight, they were that, and now the ACC is wondering if they need to retroactively take Quadir Copeland's Player of the Week award back because good grief.
I'm not buying that Shade or JJ are saying, woe is me about NC State at all. You're enjoying this way more than you're letting both of you are.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Shade wants to take back Copeland's ACC Player of the Week award. He's clearly enjoying this, as he should be. Let's talk about.
We need a segment called "Throw in Shade." Let's go.
That sounds like a whole podcast.
We've been doing this for 3 years, and we haven't thought of throwing shade. I'm a little disappointed in us.
What are we doing? We suck at podcasting, apparently. I don't know.
Guys, 4 of the top 5 teams in the college basketball went down in the last 4 days, which is kind of insane in a season where we've been talking about, there's so much dominance at the top, and yet we saw Arizona go down about an hour ago. We saw Duke go down. We saw Illinois go down. We saw UConn go down. Like we have seen the top teams crumble. And what I want to talk about now is which of those teams are legit contenders, which of those teams maybe we're actually pretenders. And we're going to get into that to close out the show coming up here in just a second. But first, folks, tax season, it just doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax's full service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert start to finish without all the stress or guesswork. And instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with the local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. And they handle everything from W-2s to self-employment forms and work to get you every deduction. You can upload your documents, go about your day, and get updates right in the TurboTax app. It's a huge time saver and gives you real peace of mind knowing an expert is handling it all for you. And for a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in. If a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year, just make sure you file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit turbotax.com/local to book your appointment today. All right, folks, closing out the show, continuing the conversation here, we got to talk about some of these top 5 teams, because again, that's one of the biggest storylines that we have heard time and time again during the season is like there's this clear kind of delineation at the top of college basketball. And I know Isaac and I talked about it recently because and I think this is where we start. One of the teams that wasn't in that conversation that we thought, well, maybe this is a team that belongs in that conversation was the Houston Cougars. And Houston, again, we'll talk about the teams that lost, but Houston, one of the teams that did not lose. I swear. Did not lose. They went to the Marriott Center, got a win over BYU, which if we had more time, I'd want to talk about the fact that BYU hasn't really beaten anybody good this year, but I don't know if we'll get to that yet. But Houston gets a W there. They're now up to number 3 in the AP poll. And Parker, did you feel like Houston was maybe getting a little bit underappreciated, underranked, under-discussed this season? And kind of where are you at with this team, especially with so many freshmen kind of helping to drive the ship for this group?
Yeah, my comment section, I both kind of thought there was a little bit of undervaluing there. They're a little bit louder about it, though. And I think that what's interesting about Houston is actually what people forget about a year ago. And I've been kind of tracking this for about a month now. And I don't mean to bring up the druthers and rub things into JJ or whatever, because he's had a rough weekend. But last year's team, everyone thinks about April or they think about Purdue, and they think they don't remember being 4-3. They remember being 35-5. Right. And like the way that team grew and changed and like developed over the course of the season, this team's actually hit every benchmark faster and has actually been further along. This year's team actually on paper is doing all those things better. And 2 of their 5 stars are freshmen. 4 of the guys in their 8-man rotation are first year on the floor guys for Houston. It really is a team that is ahead of schedule in a lot of ways. Now, they could lose to Purdue by 2 points last year, and doesn't matter, right? Like I understand there's a lot of randomness in the 1-game samples that are a college basketball tournament. I'm not saying they're going to national championship, but I'm saying they're absolutely good enough to. And it felt like beating BYU was the first time people kind of admitted that. Even when they beat Tech, I was like, yeah, but Kingston Flemings kind of did the comeback thing, and like that kind of got written off a little bit. And I think that, obviously the Big 12 was a gauntlet. We play both guys on the screen right here in the span of like 6 days. It's going to be crazy to see it all play out. But this team is very strong, and I think that being number 3 in the country after a weekend and win over BYU, even if they hadn't beat anyone, including the allegations, as Andy points out, I think that's a appropriate fitting given the season that they're having so far. I also have tried to drive people home and now it finally looks obvious. They're in the driver's seat in the Big 12 if they won it again, right? They've won it 2 years in a row. They've lost 5 games in 2.5 years in this conference, 5 conference games, 2.5 years in this conference. And they play Arizona one time. It just takes the one head-to-head. And they play Kansas one time. It just takes the one head-to-head. They just beat BYU. They split with Tech. Like this thing is very much in their wheelhouse. They want to go get it, right? And so I don't think that's all crazy. On a Big 12 thing, though, can I ask Derek a question? Because I actually think on Twitter I just saw, this might be my own tweet, what the illness that Darryn Peterson might have had. And I heard it was the Burry Scurries, where he is running away from potential problems. And I want to ask Derek, as someone who's got strong defensive guards,
oh no,
is this really the kind of thing where like agents and draft stock, and this could be a rough game, so we're not playing in it? Like, how much of that are you giving any credence to? Because I don't mean to bring down. You had a great night tonight. You don't need it necessarily.
Black lung pop.
Are you trying to imply that if Kansas wasn't wearing white uniforms, he might have played?
At least the shorts, yeah. Kansas State has showed us you don't have to match your shorts anymore.
That's right. No, I mean they need him. They need him. I guess tonight showed, like, it's funny. The whole conversation all year long was, especially when they lost that game to UConn, was because they went without a field goal for, I don't know, it had to be like 8 minutes or something down the stretch. And the conversation in that one was, okay, see, this is a pretty good team actually without Darryn Peterson. We didn't know about the other pieces, but they're pretty good. That was coming off the Players era when they went 3-0. But that's why you need Darryn Peterson. You can be a good team without Peterson, but you can't beat the elite teams unless you have him. And that's the crazy thing about tonight, is you showed you can still beat an elite team without him. Now, the question becomes, would you be able to beat an elite team away from home? Would you be able to beat an elite team without the aid of Allen Fieldhouse without him? And that's where I would be like, okay, like you go back just to earlier last week against Texas Tech. They don't win that game without him making those late threes against Texas Tech. So I still do think they need him, but it clearly continues to further the point that I think this was an underrated roster build by Bill Self in the offseason. And you had a lot of underrated pieces that this is actually a pretty darn good team.
I feel like Darryn Peterson, it's maybe he's playing checkers, or he's playing chess whenever he's playing checkers. And he's like, I want everybody to know that this team, my team, is good without me. So I'm going to sit out the tough games. They're going to prove it. And then I'm going to join the team for the easier games and just dominate in those games. And it's been working for him. Like you said, he did win the Texas Tech game for him. I was covering that game. I was watching it. But he took like 18 and a half minutes of the second half pretty much off before he hit those 2 threes at the end of the game and said, okay, now which like was cold blooded. Like the fact that he was able to do that was extremely impressive. But it does lead kind of into that conversation, Derek, and you did touch on it already. Like Kansas is a legit team at this point, a legit contender. I mean, a 5-loss team, they've been very good. I think Bill Self's going to start to get some serious love for Coach of the Year, which is not a conversation I thought we'd be having, but he's been fantastic. He's made the adjustments like Leaf talked about. And this team looks, in a league that's so deep and so good, they look very, very legit. Like they could be a team that's in that Elite Eight, Final Four, a national championship contention, I think, depending on what happens with Peterson. But I'm fully on board with where this team can get from a ceiling perspective.
I do think you give coach. I mean, obviously the Houston guys are like, just teams that are really good every year, like the Samson Cougs or whatever, right? There's got to be something to know about, and I don't mean to keep digging at it, where like you're winning with kind of two different teams. Like you're kind of coaching two different teams, and they're both frankly pretty good. Now, one I think is better than the other, but both teams are pretty good, and he's coaching the both of them, and that has to weigh for or account for something. Now, if he loses a handful of conference games, I don't know if you can give it to the guy who comes in fourth, and the Big 12 is the kind of guy where good teams and coaches are going to come in fourth, right? So there's some of that too.
Let's talk Arizona. We'll go back. I swear we don't only want to talk Big 12, but the main question I have at this point about Arizona is, fair enough. The main question I have about Arizona is, should they still be number one? I mean, obviously we don't know the rest of the results this week, and certainly if Michigan loses and things like that, it changes. But like, there's an argument that Arizona is still the number one team in the country, even after losing this game. I mean, it's a 4-point loss. It's on the road. It's against a very good, top 10 Kansas team.
There's no requirement. You don't even have to
keep selling it. Yes, of course they're still the number one team. It's dumb to think.
They're still
why do we do this? Why? Like, I can understand, like, at some point the losses do have to matter, but like we go into the season and we'll drop a team for losing their first game, and it's like, did you expect them to be undefeated? Because we haven't seen that in 40 years, So why are we going to drop it? Like, I'm cool giving a team a pass for their first loss.
Yeah, I'd rather lose to Kansas at Kansas than lose at home to Wisconsin.
Yes,
right.
I mean, I don't think it's particularly close. In the case of Parker, like they have 2 losses, and I would be comfortable saying like, okay, Houston and Michigan can duke it out for 2, more comfortable than Michigan usurping Arizona for losing to Kansas at Kansas. Like, I think that if Houston had just 1 loss, I think they have a better case than Michigan, because Michigan's been like on the ropes against some poor teams.
Against TCU, speaking of Big 12, against TCU. I mean,
TCU against Wake Forest, against Penn State. Like, I mean, I'm not. I said this at the beginning, a little bit on air, and then before. But to me, the biggest accomplishment for Arizona is I really thought they played pretty poorly for the first half, and they were shooting over 50% from the field.
Mhm.
And I mentioned how poorly two of their best players, like their presumptive best two players preseason. If I asked any of you guys who are the best two players on this team, it would be Pete and Bradley. Those guys went 4-19. I don't think the team played pretty well or very well at all. And I wrote that in my notes. And I said this in my postcast. And they were up and they were shooting 50 plus from the field. And then they shot like 35% in the second half and still had every chance to win the game at Kansas in a bad game where three of their players combined to score like 12 points. And they scored 78 at Kansas when Kansas played inspired. Flory was unbelievable. And yes, no, Darryn Peterson kind of like puts like a slap in the face to Arizona. But I do think it changed the tenor of the game, which actually wore Arizona out in a unique way. And so if you're going to penalize the team for losing at Kansas, which every team that's been ranked higher than Kansas at Kansas has lost, I don't see the point of the ranking system. I'm not even like saying that to protect Arizona's brand. I don't really care if they fall to 2. But I think it would be a stupid like reason for the justice for Michigan. Like I don't see any like basis behind it.
JJ, Isaac, Duke, North Carolina, what do you guys think about your teams in terms of being like legitimate contenders? I know obviously Duke has been in that top 5 conversation throughout the year. Really good defensive front court. Some questions about the backcourt at times, and certainly like the development of Dame Sarr and some depth things. But JJ, I'll start with you. Kind of, I can't imagine we're overly concerned about a game that you led for 39.9 seconds or 39.9 minutes and then lost. I mean, it stings, but it's not exactly a resume breaker for Duke. You still feel like this team's, kind of right in that mix.
JJ, can I ask it to you this way? I've been meaning to ask you this and I keep forgetting. I keep meaning to text you this. Okay. I feel like this Duke team is not like as talented as last year's Duke team. Not quite as good, but they're succeeding seemingly at a higher level. Why is that?
It's so hard to figure out because the rest of the ACC is so much better too. Like
exactly.
All of these things don't necessarily compute.
Do you agree with that? Do you agree with 100%.
That? Like I think the talent from top to bottom on last year's squad is further along than this year's team, and yet this year's team has just been finding ways to win and whatnot. I think you look at the game against North Carolina, and clearly in the second half, the Tar Heels woke up, and Henry Vasar decided to use his frame and make an impact on the interior. It helped that, for somehow, some way, North Carolina committed just one single foul in the second half, and Duke shot 0 free throws, because that is something that we're used to seeing in college basketball.
It's so sad when the whistle doesn't go your way.
It just, boo-hoo, that's how I was feeling. And there were shots that Isaiah Evans certainly wants to have back. There were shots in the first half that I love Dame Sarr. He's continuing to progress game by game by game. But my brother, please look down at the 3-point line and make sure your toes aren't on it when you're open in the corner. Twice in the Carolina game. It's happened a few times earlier in the season. I don't know if he's making the European adjustment and trying to figure. I don't know what's going on there. But got to figure out a way to take a step back and knock those down. But no, I think Duke is still in this national title conversation. Quite frankly, if anybody wanted to argue that, I don't know what that argument would be. It'd be foolish to me. I just hate that we're throwing shade over this loss. Parker's smiling over the Final Four. And I'm just, all I have is I don't know. I don't know, guys.
I do have a question about Duke, though. Like, their guard play is thoroughly mediocre as compared to, the expectation of Duke. Yeah, their floor is really high because Boozer's fantastic. But is there a concern you run into a team that can mitigate his advantage on the interior, or should there not be as many fouls called that your guards aren't good enough? Because frankly, like, I don't think Caleb Foster's any good. I've said that for years. And if he plays well, I'll prove he can. I'll eat crow, but I just don't think he's that good. And I don't think Caden Boozer's that great either. And Evans is a spark plug type of guy, not like an uber consistent guy. Do you have any doubt about Duke's chances to make an Elite Eight, a Final Four?
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah. And if the shots aren't falling, the 3-point percentage, this is a therapy session for me all of a sudden, I guess. The 3-point percentage hasn't been where you want it to be as of late if you're watching Duke basketball the last couple of games. But the reality is they do have Cameron Boozer. They do have Patrick Gongba II. Malik Brown does get incredibly active there on the interior. They're able to make things work. despite some of the inefficiencies that they might have there at the guard spot. I'm holding out hope. The fact that Caleb Foster is someone who very easily could have transferred and looked for greener pastures, stayed loyal to Duke, much like Seth Trimble, who knocks down the shot for North Carolina, flirted with the transfer portal, said, you know what, I guess I'm going to have this big moment in the greatest rivalry in sports. Good for him. So I'm happy Foster stuck around. And, I still think Caden Boozer will turn the corner too. So go Duke, fellas. That's all I'm saying.
I do like, though, we're talking about Peterson sitting out. I think earlier Leaf said that he personally, there's no reporting here, but thinks that Pete might be hurt, whatever. And JJ's like, yeah, but we do got our guys. We do got them. And so they're good.
Well, I will use the injury excuse for my team because I've just been deflecting so you guys can all talk about the miserable losses you've had when my team lost to the 230th ranked team in the net on Wednesday for the first time in 14 years. But hey, our second leading scorer is hurt, and it doesn't sound like he's coming back anytime soon. So to answer the question for my team about Gonzaga, if they're contenders, not unless Braden Huff makes a miracle recovery from whatever the heck is hurting him on his left knee, because that was a really ugly game against a place I used to work, by the way, the Portland Pilots. So all my friends and coworkers were texting me, and I was like, yeah, this sucks. I am not happy that we lost this basketball game, but you know what? I'm glad that we managed to make it 45 minutes before, and I'm just going to end the show now so none of you can give me any crap about it. So folks, that's going to wrap it up for us today here on the Locked On College Basketball Squad Show. Thanks so much for joining us, everybody. We're going to have these once a week from here on out until we get to the end of the college basketball season. Maybe we'll get some of these going in the off season as well. But again, those of you who listen to Locked On College Basketball, we always want to say apologies to the Lawyer family. Let's go Wild Popes. Cheers to the Mick Bruins. And folks, until next time, peace out.